So here we go, assuming the best. That's where we're going, assuming the best. As I said before, these are assumptions that we make as the classroom teacher that will change the way the kids respond to us. We're going to look at two assumptions. The first one comes out of your teacher contract. What page are we on, please? Page 2, thank you. The first assumption comes out of your teacher contract. When you signed your contract with the district, somewhere in that multi-volume document, there is a clause, and it says something to the effect of, and I'm going to paraphrase because every district writes it different, but it says something to the effect of, teachers in this district are here to teach content and appropriate behavior. Teachers teach content and appropriate behavior. Now, you might not have seen this clause or recognized it in it, and maybe it's because you just looked at the pay scale on the signature page. But you might also have missed it because it's written in invisible ink. But it makes a really big difference whether or not you believe it to be true. For example, let me start with this. Raise your hand if what you really wanted from being a classroom teacher was to be a behavioral specialist. Yeah, nobody goes into teaching, or very few people go into teaching to be behavioral specialists, and very quickly we find out that it is more than half our job. And yet we've had very little training in it and aren't sure how to do it. But if we start with the assumption that we're in the room just to teach content, when we have a student who is a chronic misbehavior, eventually we will start to resent that student because we will perceive that behavior as being in the way of us doing our jobs, which is to teach content. If, on the other hand, we start with the assumption that we are in that room to teach behavior, it is just as much a part of our job as teaching content. When we have this student who is a chronic misbehavior, instead of feeling resentful, we can maybe feel grateful. Thank you, student, for misbehaving and giving me the opportunity to do the other half of my job. Now, I'm not saying that you're going to feel overtly grateful to a student when they misbehave, but what I am saying is it changes, if even subtly, the way that you speak to that student, especially in a disciplinary moment. And all kids ages 2 to 18 can pick up on the subtlest feelings of resentment in an adult authority figure. And ultimately, they will respond to that and not to what you say or do. Woohoo! Second assumption, I'm going to illustrate these in a minute because they're abstract. Students want to learn appropriate behavior. That's great, right? They want to learn it. It's our job to teach it. Those things fit perfectly together. Raise your hand if you have ever heard that kids will test you at the beginning of the school year. Okay. Raise your hand if you felt tested last year. And they will, right? There's no avoiding this. Kids will test us. But if we assume that kids want to learn appropriate behavior, we can also assume they want us to pass the test. So what's happening is, in my mind, is the first day of school, or the first time that you meet your kids, there is an invisible contract being signed between us and them. And their part of the contract says, teacher, please, teach me appropriate behavior in a safe and structured environment. And our part of the contract says, student, I promise I will do everything in my power to teach you appropriate behavior in a safe and structured environment. So what's happening on the first day of school is they walk into the room, they have this invisible contract in their hands, and they test us to see if we can be trusted to honor our part of the contract. So I have a kid, he breaks some minor rule. If I come down on him like a ton of bricks, he says, this class is not safe, and this teacher cannot be trusted to honor her part of the contract. On the other hand, if he breaks some minor rule and I don't address it or do, but not effectively, then he thinks, this class is not structured, and this teacher cannot be trusted to honor her part of the contract. What kids ultimately want from us is safety and structure consistently enforced, and when they get that, they will trust us. And when they trust us, they will stop testing us. Safety and structure, these are the two pillars of effective classroom management. Let me give you an illustration. Brittany's in my class, you're all in my class, and Brittany is misbehaving. I'm going to come through with safety and structure 2 times. I'll do the illustration twice, and I'll explain what the differences are after each one. But for now, just imagine, you're my class. We're starting a new unit today on the California Gold Rush, and Brittany is misbehaving, okay? Good morning, class. Today, oh, good morning. Today, we're going to start a new unit on the California Gold Rush. Now, before we get started, Brittany, please stop. I want to find out what you already know about this time period, so raise your hand if. Did you catch the discipline? Do you think it was effective? No. This is what I call drive-by discipline. Drive-by discipline, at its heart, comes from the assumption that we're in the room just to teach content. And we want to get by that disciplinary moment as fast as we can, get back on the content. On the other hand, if I start with the assumption that I am in that room to teach behavior, it is just as much a part of my job as teaching content, the same illustration might look like this. Good morning, class. Today, we're going to be talking about the California Gold Rush. Now, Brittany, please stop. Thank you. Before we get started, I want to find out what you already know about this time period in history, so please raise your hand if. Could you tell the difference? All right, let me ask you this. Was it safe? Did I come down like a ton of bricks on Brittany? No. Was it structured? Did I ask for what I want? Am I probably going to get it? Safety and structure. And what I'm doing is I'm using a very specific strategy. This is your first concrete strategy for today. It is called tone, volume, and posture. Tone, volume, and posture. And what it means is, when you are disciplining a student across the room, which, by the way, is never ideal, right? Ideally, you never discipline a kid across the room. Ideally, you walk up to that kid and you whisper the discipline in their ear. But the practicalities of classroom teaching are such that sometimes we have to discipline across the room. So when you do, tone, volume, and posture can help you maintain safety and structure. And what it means is use a calm but serious tone. Calm but serious tone. Lower the volume of your voice. And square your posture to the student. Calm tone, low volume, square posture. Of those three things, it is actually squaring your posture to the student that communicates the seriousness of your request the most. Most communication between human beings is nonverbal, and it's that nonverbal squaring off that says, I'm talking to you and this is serious. And then what you say and how you say it backs up the posture. Oftentimes when I'm working with struggling teachers who are struggling with behavior in their classrooms, I see them doing the tone and the volume, but they're doing this. Could you please stop? Thank you. And the posture is like this. And what that's communicating to the student is, I don't really care if you stop. I want to get off of this and on to something else. So the square posture is what's communicating the seriousness the most. Now, I know already some of you have a yeah but, and you're probably special ed teachers who work with behaviorally disturbed kids. Because with emotionally disturbed kids, sometimes you can't square off with them because that incites them. So, as I said before, not every strategy will work for every kid in every instance. We're weaving together, right? It's one in a smattering that we'll have in our toolbox that will work with some kids. If it doesn't, we move to a different strategy. But for many kids, tone, volume, and posture is the first line of defense for you to get them back on track. Tone, volume, and posture.
So volume, tone, and posture all shift when I shift from content to behavior and back again. Volume, tone, posture. I'll give you this model again. Look up if you want to catch it, just what I did before. See if you see these three things. Class, in 1848, gold was discovered. Sean, could you please put that or have a seat? Thank you. As I was saying, gold was discovered, so we go down. Now, if you're trying to get past the waves in the ocean, and the waves are of any appreciable size, and you think, today, I'm just going to run past the waves. What's going to happen? You will get slammed down, right? The gentlest, most efficient way past the waves is to go underneath them. And it's the same thing with student resistance. We go underneath the resistance, going down in volume, tone, and posture. Now, there's no guarantee that Sean will put it away and have a seat when I do that. But I guarantee you it will not work if I go in the opposite direction. Sean, put away, have a seat! Right? Everybody in the room is bouncing out of their chairs before they even realize what I said. Because the nonverbals will hit them quicker than the verbals. Bing, 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 what? Oh, see, what? So we go down.
Before I leave this, a minute ago I said that kids will test us until they trust us and then they'll stop once they trust us, right? Raise your hand if you have ever had the experience of a kid who tested you the entire school year. Yeah, and if you're in the classroom for any length of time, you'll have those kids who test and test and test, and they never stop. I had that kid last year, year and a half ago. Last year I was in the classroom. I was teaching 10th and 11th graders in Oakland, and my 10th grade class, one of them, they came in, they tested me, and I was safe and structured and consistent. They gave up. But not this one kid. This one kid came in, first day of class, testing, breaking rules every day thereafter that he attended school. Last day of school, final exams. He walked into the room breaking rules. Now, I was safe and structured and consistent with this kid the whole year. He's been a pain in my butt the entire school year. But on the last day of school, I have a choice, right? I'm never going to see him again. I could let it go. I mean, I'll see him on campus, but not in my classroom. But I knew somewhere in his mind, whether it was conscious or not, somewhere in his mind, he was thinking, today, she's going to give up on me. Today, she's going to stop caring. And because I knew that was in there somewhere, I did come through with safety and structure on the last day of school. Now, I never got to see any change in his behavior, but my assumptions are the same. He wants to learn appropriate behavior. He wants me to teach it to him in a safe and structured environment. But some kids require more than the space of 1 year to internalize trust. Some kids are battling a lifetime, even if they're 5 years old, a lifetime of not being able to trust adult authority figures. Some kids require more than the space of 1 year to internalize trust. So my assumptions remain the same. Maybe next year, if he gets another teacher or a series of teachers who are safe and structured and consistent, maybe they'll get to see the manifestation of his internalized trust. But by the way, this is why sometimes you have a kid who challenges you all year. They never change. And then next year, they see you in the hallway, they come by your classroom, and they say things like, "Oh, Mrs. Dearborn, you were my favorite teacher." And you're like, "What?" I totally did not get that last year. Right? And that happens because they have the summer to internalize what you did for them. And then when they're in a position of not being in your classroom, it's a little bit more safe for them to come forward and express their appreciation for how you held them accountable, because they can feel your love underneath that accountability.